This is Carl King. To support this podcast, head over to patreon.com/carlking and send me $1. It'll be a lot of fun. Today's interview with Trey Spruance of Mr. Bungle and Secret Chiefs 3 and Mimicry Records was recorded in August 2017. That's about 14 months ago, which is not a bad turnaround time at all for this show. While I've got you here, listen to this. I just released a trailer for an animated TV show pilot I'm working on, starring Dweezil Zappa, John Schnepp of Metalocalypse, rest in peace, Mike Keneally, yes, that Mike Keneally, Leanna Vamp, Joni Brosis, and Ebony Amber. If you go to my website, carlkingdom.com, you can watch the trailer, and you'll notice the main character, Gary, is wearing a certain band's t-shirt. And I think those of you who came here just for this interview will appreciate it. Before we get started, quick shout out to my endorsement companies, Ernie Ball, Fractal Audio, Millennia Media, and Toontrack. Come on, Cubase. Let's get your name on here. Oh, whoops. So let's go to Mike Stone's garage near San Diego, also known as Metronomicon Studios, where I talked with Trey about composing the first Mr. Bungle album, music theory, orchestration, recording, the anti-business of music, politics, and even a bit of religion, which was kind of uncomfortable. Holy moly. So here we go, Trey Spruance. How does it feel to be in Mike Stone's garage?
It feels good. He has way better headphones. I only have one pair of like realistic Radio Shack. Radio Shack is now defunct, I guess, or at least the one near me. And I'm sad because I can't get $25 headphones anymore. I'm going to have to buy one of these good studio pairs.
Yeah, I keep buying these Vic Firths. It's like almost become a fashion thing for me. Everywhere I go, I end up wearing these.
I noticed last night at the show you had it like as ear protection, which is smart.
I'm usually working in video, and I work around a lot of drummers and a lot of shows. So it's so much easier than ear plugs.
Oh, yeah.
With the dirty wax and everything going in and out of your ears. It's just like, forget it.
I mean, I totally agree.
There you go.
And it's really great that a drum company would be making, because the drums, that's the problem. I stand right in front of them every night. Yeah. Maybe Vic Firth would endorse me for just the ear protection aspect.
Yeah. I actually tried, like when I was doing mostly video stuff, I was like trying to like, hey, what do you think Vic Firth would give me a deal or something? I asked one of my drummer friends. It's funny. Didn't go anywhere, but oh well.
Yeah, there's always talk about all these endorsement things. I've never gotten any of them, but ear protection, that's the new one. I think there's a future in ear protection.
I want to briefly address something, and then we can move past it.
Like taking a really big crap, and then we're home free after that. Okay.
And then the interview's over. I haven't seen you in like 10 years.
Has to be 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to go back and apologize for the Sir Millard Mulch stuff, even though you always seem to be cool with it and amused by it.
I never felt victimized at all by it, but you're on the edge, you're on the edge.
I was.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was annoying, and I was a troll professionally,
Yeah, like, you were like a proto troll. Yeah, but you never did anything to me that I feel like you have to apologize for at all.
Yeah. I enjoyed our friendship back in San Francisco, and then once I started kind of getting involved with the Sir Millard Mulch being on Mimicry kind of thing, I started getting really motivated by the ambition of it and feeling like I'm going to be on Trey's label. I was really desperate. That started like taking over, and I became very wanting to prove to everybody that I was on the label or something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember. No, great. Yeah. It's great to hear you say. I mean, most people don't have the guts to come out of the shell after something like that. Right. But you weren't, you weren't egregious about it. That was always the plan. To me, the satirical aspect of what you did was understood from the very beginning. Yeah. And if I'm the butt of it, that's part of the deal.
Yeah. And anyway, I know that I just want to put that out there because I do feel embarrassed that happened. And then I feel I'm not sure what happened, but then we weren't in contact for a long time. And I felt like I regretted that because I enjoyed just hanging out with you as a person.
Oh, and
then nice. Once that took on the other thing, it totally, I felt like messed up what was going on.
Maybe interfered a little bit, but actually, frankly, from my end, I just became more of a hermit over time.
Yeah.
And like most of my friends sort of felt that I was withdrawing from them too, aside from any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So there's both,
Sure.
Both things happen. I just sort of...
Well, I know you're a hermit. You are very elusive.
Yeah, and I was really just like kind of putting my head down, and then we started going on tour, and this is a good thing where, tour and having a social life, to me, 2 or 3 tours in a year is essentially all the socializing I can even take. And for the rest of the time, I just want to be completely alone or just with my wife, like...
I can dig it.
You understand, right? I mean, It is enough. It's enough, like, sort of talking for 1 year, even just being on one tour.
Yeah.
But I have never, like, thought, oh, that fucking mulch guy, I kind of want to hang out with that. So, we just didn't talk,
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's all that happened there.
Right. Awkward compliment. I've always found you much more even interesting as a person than as a musician. And I discovered that pretty quickly after hanging out with you. It was like, there's this interesting character here. And I think that ended up later on when I got into documentary filmmaking and stuff like that. I think picking up on that is what later developed into filmmaking and all that, and writing and stuff like that.
Yeah, you've been doing tons of stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen a little bit of it. I even heard the thing you did, and I say this is well received, a kind of reinterpretation of Mr. Bungle music.
I was going to ask if that was going to be one of the questions here, yeah. So you did come across that.
I heard it, yeah.
Cool.
I was like, whoa, this is pretty good. Actually, I think it was Trevor who heard it first, or said something about it. No, I had heard it, but Trevor had mentioned it too. He thought it was pretty good too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of people who do, let's put it this way, who sort of think they know what's going on with that music. And when you focus on like just the vocals or just the guitar part, there's always like, how do you do that guitar part? Like, man, are you listening to this record? The guitar part is just nothing. It's barely even part of the jigsaw puzzle. It's just a teeny little piece.
I like that you describe it as a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, you caught a bunch of the stuff, and then you also put your own sort of imagination into it, which is...
Either that or I just made mistakes, but...
lots of mistakes, lots of transcription errors, too many tritones.
Too many tritones?
Yeah. Well, or too little. It's hard to tell with tritones. But it was good, like, because it was reimagined in a way that was entertaining for us to hear. Like, oh, cool. Like, all those little nuances are there, and then he went a different way with it. It was pretty great.
Well, thank you.
I mean, MIDI bullshit sounds aside.
Right.
It's hard to get away from that, right? I mean, how do you get away from, if you're not going to spend tons of money?
If you're not going to spend $10,000 an hour or whatever, minute or whatever it is.
I mean, I wish if I could put out so many records if I didn't have this insistence upon having all these instruments be played by actual people,
Yes. And I noticed that when I listened to your Book of Souls, Folio A.
Yeah.
I started listening to that, and it was right when I was kind of getting into the orchestration stuff, learning about sample libraries and everything. I started listening through it, and I was like, how is he doing this with the actual people playing this?
Yeah.
Or wait, some of this might be samples. I can't tell, but oh man, this would be very difficult.
Yeah, it's a laborious,
yeah.
It's like building we mentioned skyscrapers before. That's what it feels like,
Yeah.
Because you have a superstructure. Very often I'll use the same kind of MIDI sounds that I hear on the thing that you did. And to me, it's a perfectly legitimate mock-up.
Mm-hmm.
And what's cool about that is that musicians they can hear the scaffolding and go, okay, I generally know my place in this skyscraper. And if you give them a part, have them play the thing, it just gives them more to latch onto. So it's unfair of me to call it bullshit MIDI because I use those as scaffolding. And sometimes, to be totally candid, especially with string sounds, it's tricky. It's hard to get a full orchestral thing no matter how many overdubs you do. Like I do various techniques of having like a violinist or a viola take different seats in the section and do this.
You can put the mics up and put up 3 or 4 chairs. I even heard of like a violinist I know will do that. He'll sit here, sit there, sit there, sit there.
Yeah, exactly. Been doing that since the beginning with this stuff. But even then, and also swapping out different instruments.
Yeah.
I give motivations. Will be like, you're the first violinist, so you're playing a little sharp. You're really cocky, a little bit. You're trying to kiss ass to the conductor. Then the second violinist, well, you're competitive, so you're trying to show all of this nuance, and all the way down the line until you're like 8th chair, and every third note is a clam, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
This shit matters. Yeah. But even then, when it's all said and done, doesn't matter how many convolution reverbs you add, and I do all this stuff to try to make it sound like true orchestral. Sometimes those fake string sounds that I started with will make it into the background as like a reverb. If you use them as a reverb, it's you sort of get I wouldn't say the best of both worlds. It's actually a better reverb most of the time than using, like I use like even spring reverbs and go into various outboard gear, like real outboard gear. But I find that a lot of the times if you use the tails of the MIDI strings as reverbs, it kind of solves a lot of issues. And you still have like all of the overdub stuff as the front end.
So do you build mock-ups for this stuff with samples?
Yeah.
And then replace?
Yeah, I mean, on the instruments that, like obviously I can do the bass and guitar parts and give people like keyboard parts and stuff like that. But if it's like an oboe, I don't play oboe.
Right.
So I'll do a mock-up of an oboe so that they'll have something to... Usually when you're hiring an oboe player, they're going to read, so you don't really have to make a mock-up. But
yeah,
I find it's better than... Well, one thing I don't like to do is export out of Digital Performer into standard MIDI file, bring it into Finale and spend a day writing articulations. Let's just put it that way. It's a huge amount of time. And if I just give somebody a MIDI file with rhythm and notes and basic dynamics, that's way better. You just you save tons of time.
I've run into sort of both sides of that in hiring people. That I brought in a bassoon player one time, and I didn't over articulate the notation. It was really basic. It was like basic dynamics, forte, piano, crescendo. And that was as nuanced as it got. Yeah. And he just interpreted it, and he was happy to do that. And he put his spin on it. First take, perfect.
Yeah.
Boom. Thank you.
I think in this town, meaning Los Angeles, even though that's not where we are, I think that's where everything is now. These are good musicians. If you're paying them to do something, pay them for their musicianship. You don't need to micromanage them. It's not,
However, I've run into a guy recently. I just interviewed a guy named Artyom, a cellist from Armenia. He does a lot of movie scores and stuff. And if he shows up and there's not enough detail and he feels like the composers are putting it on him, he'll just say, I don't know what to play. What do I do? I don't know. It's not written. I don't know what to do. Because he's tired of being taken advantage of in some situations.
Surely.
So it's...
I hear that argument. Yeah, totally. Especially when there's people who don't even know how to score. Yeah. And they're coming in and say, well, try it this way, do it that way, do it that way. We're just going to sample it and make,
Right.
Then you're going to write the whole fucking thing for me, but it's all mine.
Yeah, exactly right. And then they take it and take the publishing and they sell it to someone else.
Yeah. I mean, he's right. You got to write a part for them. Yeah. I'm down with that.
Yeah.
But I'm not down with when especially with string players, when they're like, I could play this as a harmonic if you had written... I mean, on the E string, I can do the B harmonic, but maybe it would be better. It's like burning studio time with this crap. Like, no, man, the part is pretty clear. I usually, I make it so that it's clear enough. You end up not working with that kind of person. It's like trying to busk through studio time. Those people are around, but there's less and less of that shit going on.
But luckily, if you're just kind of vibing with someone and they're into what you're doing and they're cool with it, and then you match up with someone who's into what you're doing.
I'm lucky because basically I'm down here. At least it's all CalArts alumni. There's so many of them. They all know each other and they're basically stoked to do stuff, and they have all the right instincts. You know? Not like I do that much of it, but when I do it, that's who I'm dealing with usually.
I want to ask you some compositional questions. unfortunately, it's going to go back to that first Mr. Bungle record, which you're tired of talking about, I'm sure, after, I think, what was it, 26 years or something by now?
I guess, 26, Jesus. Well, longer for the material. I mean, some of the material's been around for 5-6 years before that.
Right. Yes. Something you had mentioned you did hear that orchestral thing I did. While I was working through that, I decided I want to try to understand some of this dissonance that's happening and how you guys build this architecture of what's going on. And I just picked basically my favorite sections from the record that highlighted that, and then wanted to struggle and bend my ear and try to fucking figure out what's going on, because it just does not, it's almost non sequitur to me.
I think that's why we liked it, because we heard that you actually did that work, something that people normally don't do. I mean, like you say, we're probably all pretty tired of thinking about that first record, but when somebody actually goes through the various layers of it to see what's making it tick, that's great.
It was really difficult for me because I think in a very, I went through music theory stuff, and I quit before I got to the 20th century stuff, because I just felt like, oh, well, if there's no rules, then why am I going to learn the rules? Or whatever. And I was just like, fuck this, and I quit.
I can't say I disagree with you at all on that.
Yeah, in some way, but then there's this element of, well, what are these guys doing? And I would start, I tend to be a fairly tonal person with the occasional mediant relationships or bitonal occasionally, or the occasional outside chromatic note.
I mean, if you made it to the end of the 19th century, you got everything you need.
Well, but I don't go that far into it. I'm like, oh, there's that stuff over there. I'm not going to go over the cliff, but I'll throw in a tension note once in a while, or a tritone, but I don't know what I'm getting into there.
Yeah.
But when I started analyzing that first Mr. Bungle record, those sections, I was like, how did you ever come up with, let's say, for example, the melody on Travolta? The vocal melody.
Yeah.
The guitars and keyboards are sort of doing this augmented chord, I think.
It's like a D minor major seventh for the most part.
But I mean, on the upbeats, you've got the which is like, it sounds like they're augmented chords on the top.
Yeah, I guess that's the...
that are a half step away from each other.
Right, like that's if you take the third, the fifth, and the seventh of the...
Okay.
The D minor major 7. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like an augmented chord, yeah.
Anyway, but when I started getting into that stuff and trying to place, like, okay, here's the vocal melody, and I would often not be able to relate the vocal melody to what was going on underneath it at all. It was almost like it was floating in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Not related. And I'm like, what was the process of determining those notes, and then getting a singer to hit those notes over these strange chords beneath? Is there a keyboard guide? Did you have to train the person to do that? What?
It depends on that specific case. Actually, it's great that you're being specific, because I can tell you case by case. That part, I mean, that most or a lot of that song was written as a big band jazz tune I had scored for college, called A Walk Through Necropolis.
Okay.
Yeah, and that part was one of those parts. I heard
something about this somewhere. Okay.
But I didn't write that melody as part of that thing. When we were putting it together as a Mr. Bungle song, like Patton wrote sort of the penultimate riff where it slows down and goes dun 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 dun, dun, which was that thing made the tune into a Mr. Bungle song, because before that it was like, just my kind of attempt at a big band tune, but I never had a compelling bridge section. He wrote that part of it, and it was like, that works, we'll make a song out of it. So then we had to have the lyrics and the melody over top of it. And out of nowhere, he just came up with that melody over top of that chord clustery stuff.
Yeah.
So this was like completely his native, that's what he heard, and he did it consistently. He never changed the notes. This is just how he heard it. Which was, it's authentically bitonal, I suppose, but that's because he's hearing it in his own way. And then from there, we added a couple of other things to support his melody, just a couple of other weird notes in those clusters. Like when it changes, he does it twice, and then the melody changes a little bit. there are a few little subtly embedded other notes that come in on those.
Yeah, and also singing harmonies to it over that thing, and and then trying to figure out the harmonies. I'm like, wait a minute, how do I even figure out? Like, it's like it just does not compute as far as. So I'm really curious on.
I think that's the strength of just a melodic. You know Stump, for example, that band Stump from.
No.
Oh, you don't know that band?
No.
I'll just bring that up as an example. You can check them out at some point. They're from like late 80s and early 90s. I guess it was mostly the 80s. But a British, I think Irish and British band, sort of like U2. But no, they're like a really crazy, progressive, strange fucking band. Amazing bass player, totally out. Over all of this cacophony, you would have these really consonant song, like sing-songy type of things that the vocalist would somehow manage to do over top of this total chaos, way more chaotic than what we did. And I won't say that like, is what we were thinking, but when it was happening, I totally accepted it as, you can make really compelling music where there are two different simultaneous worlds that are barely related to each other, as long as the melodic thing, let's say the melodic person, is strong enough to just kind of barrel through it all.
Yeah. And that's what's so hard is if you try to go up and do karaoke to that, it's like, how do you have to really put the note there as a vocalist.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no question. No question about it. Yeah.
And I started to find some of that in blah, 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 Faith No More. But I did find some of that in Angel Dust, where I was like, holy shit, this guy is actually hitting notes that are not there before.
Yeah.
And forcing them out, and like they're tense fucking notes that don't belong,
For sure.
But they do. I mean, they work.
They work.
They're doing their thing. But who would think to ever sing the wrong note over this thing in such a strong way?
My theory about that, because I've known Mike a long time, and I know that Trevor, Mike, and I would spend a lot of time in Trevor's bedroom just kind of hashing over stuff in the early days, and Trevor and I were very much music nerding out. So we were experimenting with all kinds of chord extensions and learning jazz and doing all this stuff. And we would show that stuff to Mike, he's really comfortable singing. Even back then he was like singing Elton John kind of types of melodies. And I think over time he just sort of developed a thing of, hitting some of those, natural sevens over when there should be a dominant seven. He just developed an ear for that kind of stuff from a lot of the stuff that we were all doing together. And then that applies. I mean, he has a strength of melodic contour he can do as a vocalist. And then he believe me, he knows where the notes are when he's doing them. It's not, it's all very natural to him.
I hear a bit of a similar thing happening in some of Trevor's stuff. What was that pop record he put out? Sort of pop?
Oh, Not True Convulsant. What the other one? Oh, Mad Love.
Mad Love.
Yeah.
I heard that and immediately there's the thing.
Yeah, Trevor's...
It's like... I actually figured out that the first... What is it? Rats with Wings song? I don't know if you even know this stuff very well, but there's this song where if you completely get rid of the rest of the instruments, it's basically Earth Angel, like totally 1, 6, 4, 5 would go over that melody, but then he puts these completely clashing chords underneath it, reharmonizing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just find that stuff really interesting, and I can, I heard that in the Mr. Bungle stuff. I hear, so I'm kind of following that, and I'm like, how do I
think Trevor's maybe closer to what you're like. My wielding of like polytonality is more, it comes from a slightly different place. Trevor's really good with, I think, teasing you into thinking you're hearing one thing, but you're hearing this one X factor thing. He always does that. He's very consistent with that, and he's really good at it. My stuff, I try to, I'm more of a consonance versus dissonance. I don't really do the idiomatic thing as well as he does. He's really good with...
What do you mean by idiomatic when you say that regarding this?
Well, to me, like when I hear like Trevor, the way he constructs, like say, dominant 7 related chord, and then the other note, like the X factor note that he throws into that, I have the same reaction to you, like as you have, is like, I can't put that anywhere. Like, what the fuck is that? Like I would have never done that.
Yeah.
I have that same reaction.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting what he does.
Here's one more question, which I'm stealing from a Bear McKinnon interview that I did. I asked him the same question. I don't know if you ever saw the interview, but I had this idea like, man, I should try to do a Mr. Bungle documentary and just fucking try to do it and do it myself just because I want to do it. And even if nobody agrees to be in it or something. So I ran into Bear on Facebook, and I thought, I was in one day I had a bunch of coffee and I was like, I'm going to fucking email the guy, ask him a bunch of questions. I'm curious, since, I picked up on that whole torturing the audience thing from you guys, I think, way back. I'm curious how you dealt with, like, right out of the gate, you guys got that Warner Brothers thing.
Yeah.
And you were so young at the time, but I feel like you dealt with that. You guys dealt with that deal in a way that other people would not deal with it.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
You went out there and you were like doing your thing and torturing people and feedback and screaming and not giving people what they expected at all, which I had never seen a band do before. I'm sure other bands have done that, and you guys probably saw other bands do that in San Francisco or somewhere, I'm guessing.
We started in a way by doing that. Our very first show was at like death metal bands, at a Grange Hall, like kind of out in the middle of nowhere up in Eureka area, Northern California. But at that show, we played some ska songs. It was just the equivalent of garlic breath. It's like the worst thing you can do with, but like skate punks were into it. You always have your cluster of people. There's people who are being alienated, or at least the audience is perceiving as you're alienating them or messing with them. But really what you're doing, like we just were interested in both death metal and ska.
Yeah.
So, like it caused this kind of shitstorm a little bit. And we got used to that. We just got used to the idea that, when you put various things together and it's natural to you, it's not natural to audiences. Yeah. And sometimes there's a bit of controversy about it. So really just, honestly, out of the gate, that's what we were doing. By the time the first record came along, and there's a backstory to how we even ended up on Warner Brothers. Totally weird. We had this very ambivalent feeling about that whole thing. So really what happens, it just kind of exponentially multiplied. Once we got into the Warner thing and we were doing a national tour, it just really exponentially multiplied our...
So you
the
guys
premise we'd already established.
So you were already doing that, and you're like, now we're going to do it even more.
We took it much farther then, for sure. For sure.
You guys reacted in a way that most people would not. Living in LA and seeing people get record deals and all of this stuff, they're like so desperate and clinging to it. It's like this precious thing that you cannot mess up, and it's once in a lifetime. And you guys just went out there and were like, fuck it.
Yeah, I think we knew how we fully expected that it was temporary. Like nobody really cared about Mr. Bungle on Warner Brothers. We didn't have a feeling that nobody, we didn't. If no amount of kissing ass would ever get you anywhere anyway.
But to know that at such an age, I can't imagine.
Well, we also had terrible attitudes, like extremely fucking negative people from this hick town, that. We're thrown into a totally unfamiliar situation for ourselves, but also, some of us have been we've been studying music really seriously. And so everything was sort of clashing with everything else. And then the most important thing maybe is just there's a group think going on and a group mania going on that maybe that just really took over. I would say it that way. The group mania just kind of wrote our behavior. We didn't script any of that stuff out. Really just took us over.
It seemed fearless.
Yeah, it was.
To watch those old videos and see you guys standing there like, we're doing our thing, and you're not, if you don't like it, we're here. You're like, you guys weren't looking around at the audience to see if do they like us? There was none of that. It was just like, we're fucking here.
I can tell you, Carl, Ben, it's really a thing of like, we wanted to just play our music, but we were in a situation where the audience wasn't, not like the majority of the audience was not having that. So we just developed naturally over time a way of so to speak, staring that down or triumphing over it and being sort of on top of that rather than being underneath it, you know?
Yeah.
That's really what happened.
It's kind of amazing to see that united front of everybody.
Yeah.
The only other time I've seen that in a group is maybe when I saw Sleepy Time for the first time. I was like, there's that thing again.
Yeah,
that I haven't seen.
And that's a good example because look what they do. They make it so that they're unassailable. If they have their own vehicle, they're self-sustaining on everything.
Yeah.
So that if there's like a shit gig and there's nobody there, it doesn't really matter. Nobody's feathers get too ruffled. It's the same event as when they're playing in front of a lot of people who really appreciate what they're doing.
Or in front of a slug or whatever it was, a banana slug.
Yeah, exactly. They have, it's similar. It's like there is a us against the world thing that kind of has to happen, you know, when you're doing something that's outside the box enough that, you know, you don't know what the reception is going to be. Yeah, you kind of have to have your own internal integrity. I would hate to use that term towards the confrontational shit that Mr. Bungle was doing, but there is like an integrity, because I guess the root of the word is like integration. We had an integrated understanding. You know? Yeah,
very rare to see. So hopefully these questions are not your typical poo-poo pee-pee questions.
It's pretty, so far so good, man. It can all devolve from here. I might end up staring out the window, just shaking my head.
Oh, man. I am curious, have you come across any of the Jordan Peterson stuff?
I mean, not until just now, honestly.
What do you mean just now?
Oh, wait, Jordan. You're not Justin Pearson.
No, Dr. Jordan Peterson.
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, well, I was just curious about that. I don't know how to exactly explain him, but he's getting a lot of flack right now. He's a professor in Canada at a university there, psychology dude. He recently got a ton of flack for fighting against the PC stuff up there, where he refused to use multiple gender pronouns or something like that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Like the they and all that stuff?
Yeah, but it got really extreme where there was like 16 of them or something, and he just wanted to say he or she.
Right.
And he was like, you can't force me to use these words, and he got in a bunch of trouble with the university and the government or something like that.
Oh, I'm not up on this, but sounds very current.
Yeah, so he's getting tons of attention for that, and I've been checking out his stuff quite a bit. And that led me to looking into the Big Five personality test. Familiar with that?
No, I'm out. I'm telling you, I'm out of the loop, man.
It's been around for quite a while, I guess. I mean, it's sort of the creative temperament, the creative temperament, the conscientiousness, and you basically rate yourself on these, Big Five tests.
I see.
My wife is a very conscientious person. Extremely methodical about everything, and at the hotel room she's got to put all the stuff in the suitcase in the right order and all of that stuff.
Okay, like my wife.
Yeah,
that's a good wife to have. It's perfect.
Yeah, and I would say naturally I think that I'm quite a mess and not conscientious, but that I've forced myself through like just beating the shit out of myself to try to become conscientious instead of creative fucking idiot running around not knowing what's going on.
Yeah, totally, man. I hear you completely. Believe me, I do.
Yeah. And so I'm curious about your experience with that. I don't know where you would rank on that spectrum, or what do you have to say about that?
I mean, I think things like that are if they're not changing, then there's something wrong. I mean, if you're just getting more and more entrenched in, you're the same. It's like you meet creative people all the time. When people come up to me and they're like obviously kind of a mess and then they're going, dude, you changed my life. All my guitar playing is influenced by you. It's like, I feel like I should apologize to them. It's hard to thank, to be gracious and be like, you're welcome. Like I feel like maybe I did something bad or something, because they seem like they're like off a little bit. But then I put myself in different stages of my life, and I was totally the same. I was pretty overly obsessive about musical things, so I can't really put it as a criticism, but I have to say that growing is a process of coming out of one shell kind of crawling out of these sort of obsessive tendencies to see a bigger, brighter world. Mm-hmm. And usually it seems to me that other people are really important in that picture. You know what I mean? Because it's,
sort of lighting a fire under you. It's almost like the people that I've surrounded myself with, a lot of times I end up having no choice but to improve myself.
Yeah. And that's you want to surround yourself with people like that. I mean, I really think that's it. So it's for a natural born hermit like me, on the one hand, you could go way down the wrong tunnel. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's a way to kind of palate cleanse and choose the right people to be around that sort of motivate your better sides, elevate you from your kind of crappy tendencies.
Yeah. Do you have a side that you struggle with in any way?
For me, that one would be going too much into the work. I can just kind of disappear into it. And it takes me, in a day, if I'm in there working for like 14 hours, it takes at least an hour and a half to decompress, where I'm actually a human being that's worth talking to again. I've definitely learned that. I mean, with my wife, I've established a really good working rhythm that's much healthier than it used to be. I come out of the studio every once in a while, go outside a little bit, just these little things, and then cook once I'm done for the day. Like cooking with her, she knows, let's not really talk right away. Don't try to converse, come out of your crazed mode. And then everything's really wonderful after that. You just learn stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But that's when I'm in that uncomfortable thing of having a deadline and having to do it. And, I don't really have the luxury of like having my creative time be, it's not something I can sort of wait to happen. When a creative idea comes, it comes upon me, and it's usually interrupting some other responsibility that I have. So the big thing there is like I have to deal with the guilt of flaking on this responsibility in order to attend to this creative thing. I think that having a structured thing where you feel the responsibilities that you have, it's like we don't really have the luxury,
Right.
And I see it as luxury, like, because most of what I do ends up just being hardship. I'm just editing constant, it's not creative fun times, and it's all fucking shit work, So,
I'm working on an album right now, and I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I'm done being excited about the idea, and now I need to fucking do it for 2 weeks. I need to sit there and, double the cello on something else and just fucking assign samples, and this is going to take me, 80 hours of work or something. I'm going to have to sit here, and I'm like, I hate this.
Yeah, like when
if
I
could have someone brainless do this somehow, another me.
I know.
And
that's it right there.
And I'm getting older, I guess. And my body doesn't want to sit in a chair and click on a fucking mouse and do these little micro movements of dragging things around on the screen.
I mean, this is part of why like jumping at this tour was a great thing, because like, man, I've been sitting in front of this screen.
Yeah.
Working on the Masada record and working on this cube mixes, and
it's physically just unpleasant.
Terrible. Yeah. You gotta break that shit up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's the truth. There's a dread for me, like when I get done doing, the exalted time of working with a drummer.
Yeah.
Like we nailed those drum parts. We got all that stuff at the studio. It sounds better than anything I would do because I don't have a drum studio or anything like that. Then you get it home and you're like, oh, okay, now I'm going to load all these stems in, and now I'm going to, and it's a week of this bullshit of just bringing in things, making templates, and oh my God.
What's that little meme that was going around for a while of Bernie Sanders? And it would like to say he was sitting there with a computer and looking at the screen. It said something like, gotta tweak my snare sound or something first.
These are super first world problems.
But
it is like you lock yourself in this prison.
Yeah.
A friend of mine called it the wizard prison. In my case, I think that's about right. Like, just in this stuck in this 2-dimensional trapezoid where all you can do is, whatever anybody would have to do, cut before and after that file, move the things around, and just the same thing anybody who works in audio does. Slave to it.
Yeah. I just blanked out. I was going to say, one of the most enjoyable things for me in making a record, and especially with this last record, is I didn't want to work on it anymore at all, you know, beyond the initial idea. And like that's like the fun part of like,
yeah,
I've got this huge idea, let's do this. And then like the tedious work, you know, the best part was having other people contribute their weird shit to it. That makes it alive for me. It makes it exciting.
That's the way to invigorate it.
Yeah.
I think that's it right there. Like, because when I mentioned the dread part of it, you know, it's that can really demotivate, you know. Yeah. And if you're like me and you have like this almost like a forest, like a vineyard of things that are aging, and you're waiting for the right time to sort of finish them off, sometimes actually just letting them sit, letting that dread subside, you know, you planted it, and actually subsequently you might have found a better workflow 2 years later or something like that. The things that have their moment, to me, they're really lost in time. Their moment isn't, I just got done recording that stuff, that needs to come out next month. Yeah, I don't think that way at all. Like, aging this stuff is the way to keep the workflow exciting and invigorating. And like, as you say, like scheduling the moment so that when other musicians have their input on it, like they're playing on it, it's something that just brings all this new excitement and fresh energy to it. That helps a lot. Yeah. I'm in a war against the dread, because I just, you know, I fucking hate sitting there. You know, you don't want to hate what you're doing, right? Especially when you're doing things that are, you know, big and exalted, and you want to do justice to this idea that you had. You know, you really owe it to yourself to not be sitting there with your head in your hands going, There's all kinds of ways to strategize around that shit.
Here are a couple of ideas that go together for me. I get this idea that people think music is, you know, there's this inspirational magic thing that happens, and you know, Trey or whoever goes into a room and he's just a genius, and all of this magical stuff comes out, and then it's, you know, doodly doo, and, you know, they don't realize that it's a million hours of sitting there clicking on things. Yeah. And this, for me at least, it's a very long, systematic series of steps. Yeah. Where I'm like, we're going to work on it's almost like in cartoon animation, where like, we're going to work on the fucking eyebrows today. Or work on the right eyebrow. We're going to animate the eyebrow for this guy. Absolutely. And we'll sit there all day in Adobe Flash, adjusting his eyebrow or moving his eyes. Totally. And all day long. And there's a guy in a cubicle moving the ear or something, you know? Oh, yeah. And that's what it's like, it seems, making these records.
I would put it this way, that, it's worse because it's one person doing it. It's not a team of people doing it. Yeah. But the magic part of it is in the inspiration or the vision that you get for something. Like, I generally will hear in my head or in my imagination, you know, what the thing is. When it comes in different ways, but usually I'll just get the whole impression, the whole big picture. I can hear the whole symphony, you know, essentially.
But what does that mean exactly when you say that?
It's like...
Because I get parameters where I'm like, I want to do I want to do a 21-minute horror track with strings doing this type of thing with these harmonic elements. Sure. And like start with that. And then just start filling that in. So for you, are you saying you actually imagine the sounds and harmonies?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, how you described it is very practical, because that's what I did with, for example, the Lemani record. You just define a harmonic language and, you know, take the musical themes that you have and work within that, you know. But on Secret Chief's albums in general, you know, where it's just kind of all over the place, I can hear the whole thing. I just don't know what all of the details are. And like the cliche with, you know, the sculptor and the uncarved block, I just start chipping away at it. On the practical side of it, starting with the drums and the bass, and then just honing it down, you know, down until the word I use is archetype. Like, to me, it's the inspiration, the romantic, magical thing of like the big moment of inspiration. I mean, that's a real thing, but it's in this archetypal realm. And then me as this lowly human, I have to sort of craft my way to it, which involves that working on the eyebrow meticulously, and going in there and doing that work every single day, like a slave, like a ridiculous slave. But if I didn't have that motivation, like that original thing, if I wasn't, I have to keep that thing that I heard front and center in my mind. Otherwise I'd give up and be like, why am I doing this bullshit? You have to sort of find a way to maintain the flame of that original inspiration, which I agree with you. It's not done the way anybody thinks it's done. Not even at all. Not even close. That's what I mean. Like bringing in a different voice every once in a while kind of reinvigorates it, because you hear that idea bouncing off of somebody else. You're like, okay, it's real. They hear it too.
Yeah.
It's a little different, but they got it. And then you just sort of corral everything into the shape that it's supposed to be. You basically know when you get there. You kind of throw yourself like a beached whale on the ground and you're done, But that's the way, for me, that's the way those things end up. Like, it's a painful, laborious thing in the here and now, but in the other dimension where you're hearing this stuff, it's a different story, That sustains the whole thing. More practical stuff like the Lamani record, where like you say, setting parameters. I mean, to me, that's the best way to work. It's pleasurable and has you kind of have a start point and a finish point that's clearly defined, and that's a good workflow. That's definitely I wish all of the things I did kind of came that way.
You do start to pick up on almost patterns on what you're doing. Like, I'll check out Folio A, and I obviously don't pick up on all the patterns, because I know you're a very symbolic creative person. As far as, you were once playing me some Secret Chiefs 3 demos in the car a million years ago, and you were like, this moment represents this, and this moment represents. I'm like, that's a lot of stuff. Like, that would take a while. And I don't get to that level at all, but you do pick up on that stuff when you're doing things. So I can see how there's these archetypes and sort of parameters of meaning of what you're trying to accomplish.
And you just stay true to those things. Like, to me, it's that. It's not like I'm doing this thing. It's really just staying true to, if something is representing something, it's because there's a literal connection. I don't really think in terms of like, to me, this means this. This is the moment where the light shines. Or, it's actually, there's usually like visceral justifications for that kind of stuff. But that's what I mean. I'm following rules. When it comes down to it, it's different than maybe a little bit different than strictly music theory rules, but they're rules nonetheless.
Now, on the topic of music being a business, I guess I'm at a point where I'm getting older and I start to realize that my time and energy is limited. When I do video work, a lot of times it's very profitable for me, which is great.
Yeah.
It helps me solve so many problems,
Good for you, man. I'm jealous.
Yeah. But then the music thing is just like, oh man, this is losing money.
Total disaster.
Yeah. I wonder, I guess I'm getting to this point where I'm like, man, I don't, it's not necessarily about the money, but the loss of energy that I feel a lot of times when I create something, and I'll be totally in love with the thing that I just created and think it's fucking hilarious and brilliant, and I get so much enjoyment out of it, and then I put it out there and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And people are just like, why did you do that? Or they don't even ask me why I did it. It's just like, somebody listened to it because it got clicks, but I'm like, never heard anything back from the world,
This is more, it's because the economics of it was, depressing for a long time, but now there's this thing of just everything's just being ignored. Just going in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, it's almost like you can't even get attention now.
Yeah.
When that was something that was taken for granted. Like, as Sir Millard Mulch, I could be annoying and get attention.
Right, yeah.
But now that I don't want to be annoying, and I put out a record and, 12 people buy it or something, it's like, I just spent 2 years working my ass off and spent thousands of dollars of my own money.
Yeah.
I wonder, what's your whole perspective on this? Oh, man.
I know.
I guess my thought is, you're obviously a very intelligent, capable person. I don't know how much money you make off of Secret Chiefs 3, but I'm sure that if you put your mind towards some other career, that you would probably do a lot better.
Oh yeah,
than music.
Yeah,
because music is like just you're throwing it into a hole, and it's like
it's all down. It's just a pure downward spiral. It's true.
Yeah.
That's the truth. That's just the reality.
Yeah, and I hear that Devin Townsend did an interview a while back and said he revealed how much money he makes a year. It's like $65,000 a year.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And I'm like, in one way, like, holy shit, like that's worse than the average computer programmer probably. And if that guy only makes $65,000 a year, there's what hope is there for
if that guy's making $65,000 a year, Trey Spruance is making less than that, and that's the truth. You know, I mean, but there are things that happen sort of randomly. I don't want to give too much to serendipity and all that, but every once in a while, like this tour came along at a good time, actually a terrible time because it was so hard at work in the middle of a Masada record. And had this other work that I was doing for this thing at Virginia Tech, how perfect, if I just put in the extra push to get all of it done and be prepared for all of it, then in the end, all of it works together. Like it however much excessive time I spend on the Masada record, not able to justify the amount of work for the budget or whatever. Yeah. And also for the Cube doing this immersive 3D listening thing. At the same time, when we do a Masada gig, everybody gets paid pretty well, right? The payoff is sort of down the road on those things. We get invited, and if we do a really good job, we get invited on a lot of those things. Whereas if I just half-ass it or just phone it in, it's going to go nowhere, So my natural instinct is to never do anything half-assed, to go all the way on it, and that ultimately in the end has paid off, actually, because not the sales, not any of that stuff, but just a bunch of kind of random things that come into the picture every once in a while. Those are the things that end up sustaining it. Right now it's a big sort of mess of different things. We got some BandCamp income, we have tour income. We get on the Masada gigs, basically just hopping lily pads to just keep it going, But I'm not complaining because I see what's going on with everyone else, and it's fucking horrible. The fact that we can even sustain it is almost a miracle.
Yes.
And sustain it at the level...
You're using the word miracle, and that's what I've been using to describe some of these situations, that it is a miracle that some people are able to continue doing what they do. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that has everything to do with just throwing everything into it, and it's like not half-assing anything.
Well, what worries me is that really sustainable over a lifetime? And I think about the idea of getting older, and I'm like, man, I don't know, I couldn't do it. Like,
it's a good challenge to have, though.
It's in some ways I've projected some disgust on musicians where I'm like, you guys are fucking idiots trying to do this.
Yeah.
But then at some point I'm like, man, I really respect that in a way, because I would not put myself through that.
Right,
I don't have the people that I know who are doing decent at music, who have I grew up in Florida, 2-bedroom house with my mom and dad, blah, 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 and the people who are have a 2-bedroom house and a car, they're the ones who are working insane hours, touring all year, recording record after record. They're just at it all the time.
Yeah.
To be able to have that traditional middle class situation.
Sure.
And you never see anybody in another career working that hard, maybe. I'm sure there are, like CEOs or something, but who works
I think
as hard as a musician?
Yeah. In this day and age, I think it's true.
And gets 10%, gets paid 10% of what they would normally make in a job doing something else. It's amazing.
Yeah. No, and you look at it, you see it when, like American bands, I don't know, this is still from a few years ago, but, they want to go to Europe. And it's sort of like the UK promoters like, well, you want to go to Europe, you got to go through us. We're the English speaking, There's, we worked around that for our own weird, I shouldn't say it. Our music works very naturally in the Mediterranean. It's kind of natural to the way people feel and hear music. A lot of what we do. It's not as Like in the Anglo world, it does work well too, but you know what I mean? Like sometimes you get forced through these gauntlets that ultimately you have every American band competing with every other American band on the same little circuit and agreeing to lose money and have a terrible time, and those bands will die and there will be another one to replace them next year. It just happens. Like this cycle. People
talking about in America?
In Europe, just European touring.
Oh, Europe.
And American bands, it's like, well, we want to go tour Europe, we want to party and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And then they're dead the next year.
Yeah.
And there's people to replace them right after that.
Huh.
It's kind of like a prosumer market. I'm seeing a lot of prosumerism among musicians. People are willing to lose money.
Yeah.
They have money from somewhere and they're willing to throw it at their dream of being a musician.
Yes.
And then, it's like you can't, for Secret Chiefs, we can't really compete with that because we don't have money to throw at the thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to put it like a disdainful thing on it. It's just we don't have like deep pockets to spend on our dreams when it comes to that, and we're real serious, like workaholic band.
Yeah.
So sometimes you get the treatment like, oh, you're one of those bands. Like you just want to sort of exploiting musicians that are willing to throw money at stuff.
Yes.
Whereas like, we're not that.
There's a whole parasitical thing of people who are after musicians that are willing to dump money on things. Because
those musicians want to just stand in front of a crowd and feel like they're famous, So it's a supply and demand market. It's the same thing that happened when, Guitar Center started putting pro audio in there, and then the company started creating inferior, quote, pro audio units for everybody to use.
Yeah.
So there's always a market for this kind of thing. And so to me, like standing outside of that is part of the longevity also of Secret Chiefs 3. It's just never getting caught up in any of that crap. Never working with promoters who are like that. I'm talking about Europe there because US is totally different. But you just kind of have to watch out for getting swept up with the transitory world of the consumer musician.
Yeah, I see someone who wants to put out their first record. They put it out, and then immediately they come up with all this money and blow it on things that they think they're supposed to spend money on because they're in a band, like renting a huge tour bus.
It's just amazing, isn't it?
And like, wow, these people are just standing around waiting for you to spend money on them. Like they're tricking you into thinking you're supposed to do that.
You're supposed to bring your light rig and your, it's crazy. And I think there's a lot, I don't know, maybe there's a little bit less of that than there was like a few years ago, but it's still just, we have to navigate around that paradigm because that paradigm is everywhere,
It is a cargo cult.
Exactly.
You probably know what a cargo cult is, right?
Oh, yeah, I love that stuff.
Yeah. I want to ask you, before we quit this, the political stuff that's going on. Can you talk about that? Where are you at on this stuff? What is going on? What are we doing?
I'm just so glad that we've entered into this new age of peace and harmony.
Yeah.
I find myself... I'm more and more like I've never even been able to sort of manage to empathize too much with really far right-wing stuff. But it is, maybe it's a natural habit of mine that when people who are more in my sort of native way of being on the left are starting to act like total fucking assholes, that I start to try to think about empathy a little bit more seriously. Because it's disturbing to see people turn into total intolerant dicks just because there's a bunch of other intolerant dicks, To me, that's the crisis. From where I sit, I'm concerned about that. Like everyone turning into dicks. That's my take on modern politics, I guess.
Wow.
There has to be some, there has to be a blurry area where things being fucked up is okay. There has to be a little bit of space for things to be a little bit fucked up. There's a lot of intolerance on every side of this thing, and I'm afraid that people on the left aren't seeing that. It's really easy to see it on the right. It's a no fucking brainer. But what's happening to us? It's really getting gross, getting disgusting. So it makes me glad I live on a mountain, that's for sure. But, I don't want to feel like that. Like, well... that's for those assholes to figure out. Fuck that. The world's coming to an end. I'm not like that, But it's sad. It's sad to see people I know becoming totally intolerant dicks. And
I guess you also... Well, you live in a different area than I do. So you're Santa Cruz area.
Bay Area, very PC.
We don't have that much of that in the LA area. We're more just Sunset Strip douchebags and LA.
Well, there's
dudes.
Echo Park, and
there is, but that's not. I don't run into that very much.
Okay,
so it's not a super left. I guess I'm not exposed to the left being the way that you're talking about.
You're right. Southern California's really. I mean, California itself is a completely unique entity. Everybody thinks that it's left wing, but we'll drive 20 miles east of where you are, and ask yourself again. I don't place myself left, right. I don't do it, but of course I'm in circles that are left wing because I'm a musician and playing the kind of challenging music that I do. That's just where I end up. My personal political beliefs don't square with really anybody, on any side of any political spectrum. Mm-hmm. But friends, I put it that way, like people that I share sort of a cultural unity with. That's what only thing I'm really referring to is just seeing them getting heated up and some of it starting to get a little ugly. That definitely concerns me.
Hey, was there anything to Book of Souls Folio A being sort of this is the impression I got, kind of a post-apocalyptic radio transmission? It seemed like there were station IDs that were happening. It was almost like it was a radio station. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. There's a little
bit of vibe to that.
There's 7 station IDs, I don't know about post-apocalyptic,
well,
but
yeah.
They are, maybe it's pre-apocalyptic or something. I mean, I think apocalypse, in a way, Revelation, it is a matter of revealing the fullness of time to the limited linear nature of time. So it's kind of revealing the fact that there isn't actually linear chronological time. So it would be both pre and post-apocalyptic, I guess.
Did you follow Harold Camping at all?
No, what's that?
The guy who predicted the world would end May 21, 2011. The preacher?
No, but I'm very familiar with a long list of people who have been doing that for the last 2,000 years.
Do you believe Jesus was an apocalypticist? Any of that? Do you get into that biblical scholarship type stuff?
Well, yeah, it's good to get into that because even when you look at the Council of Nicaea condemns as a heresy the idea of putting a date on apocalypse. It's actually a heresy according to the Christian church that was established in the beginning, let's say, the beginning of Christianity. Really, one of the first heresies that was pointed out was this ridiculous habit of putting a date on the apocalypse. So, as far as technically speaking, the Christian religion has its crap together on this question. I don't know who these cranks are that have been trying to say that the end is nigh for 2,000 years, but they don't belong in the Christian church.
Wow. I was involved with a documentary on Harold Camping, so I wondered if you had heard of him.
No, I think I know about, or he was just, I heard about that stuff, and I remember thinking, oh, another one of those Chilleists.
What was that?
That's the term, Chilleism. That's the heresy.
Chilleism?
Chilleism is the belief that one can anticipate the end of all things.
Okay. I'd not heard of that.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that I should have asked you, Mr. Trey?
No, we covered absolutely everything. Every possible thing.
Here's one. Here's another one. And then that's it. This is the last question.
When we get to Revelation, we're really opening the umbrella up wide there. We pretty much covered it.
Have you considered being a teacher as a profession?
I think I could do some things like that, but it would be hard. My personality it doesn't really work. I can't really keep lucid in front of a group of people for very long. I am going to be doing a thing at the New School in New York in April, like a 3-hour seminar of some kind. So I'm going to try my hand at it. I'm open to it. I like the idea of it because there's so much to talk about, and I get asked questions if, like in this interview, if we wanted to go really deep into specifics.
Yeah.
I love it. I want to be able to do stuff like that. And that's where all the good stuff is. So, I mean, yeah, I would love to have a course of some kind. I haven't really figured out what shape that would take, but that Geek Pack is kind of the first step that I've taken into a kind of educational direction. Even that is sort of tricky because it's like, you know, it gives you a little window into what's involved in working in the digital audio workstations, a little window into what performances make up an arrangement. I would love to expand on that premise and really go into like what the nuances of arranging for a big ensemble are, what the challenges of putting non-Western tonality together with Western tonality. And I mean, there's a lot to talk about.
I saw your guitars have a lot of unusual frets.
Yeah,
but I noticed that I don't think your bassist changed temperament.
It's very deceptive. That's a fretless.
Oh, it is?
But it has frets painted on it.
Okay. Didn't catch that.
And his ear he's been acclimating to our tuning system very well. So it's pretty seamless at this point. We don't even...
Yeah.
But to me, that's an achievement. We're able to put together a band that is fluent enough in some non-Western tonalities, and it's doable. It is something that I could probably teach people how to do, given, you know, a few hours, you know.
Have you thought about doing a Patreon?
I have, but I'm not sure. Like, I don't know if that's the way to go. Maybe it is.
It's a real easy way for people to just support their favorite artists. It's like
I know.
A super clean way of doing it. Like, there goes the money to you. Like, a lot of people are just happy to do it.
I'm so stubborn. Like, the thing is, like, I you know, maybe it's a very stubborn American pragmatist thing that I have of, like, I'm going to give you a product if you're going to give me money.
And I think that's what people get caught up on. But I think the urge is, it's just, hey, I want this person to continue to exist and do their thing. Like, right on. Here's $5 a month.
Wow.
And that's it. Or $1 a month. And those all add up. And Jordan Peterson's doing $60,000 a month now on that thing.
Whoa.
For making YouTube videos.
Whoa. You see, there's part of me that's like...
There's your orchestra.
You know, I know. It's very tempting. It's very tempting. The things I could do with having a little, you know, how much easier it would be to be able to fund projects and not just lose money on everything. Yeah. But you're probably right. I know. I just still have this, like... People should be motivated to, you know, to buy the music, but maybe that's stupid.
But I feel like a lot of people, when they go to a show, when I'm there at your booth, and I'm like, I feel like I want to buy something to help you guys. And I'm like, well, I paid for a ticket, so that might be good enough, and then we're doing the podcast, and maybe that's something. But a lot of times I'll buy a shirt, even though I don't want the shirt, you know? And I help people on Patreon because I'm just like, fuck it, here's $5 a month.
You're right. I've seen lots of people, because I'm at the merch booth, and lots of people would be like, I want a shirt and a CD. Okay, that'll be, you know, $28, and they give you $40, and they're like, keep it. Yeah. And I'm just like, no, that's $12. Here's another CD. Take it. You know,
I think it's really not about that. It's not about bang for the buck. It's like they're here to help, and, you know, building the thing.
That's the part of the new world that I have to get used to. I need to learn.
Capitalist.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm way too much of a capitalist. I guess that's what it is, right?
It's been revealed on the Carl King podcast.
Oh, that's terrible. The French promoter is going to be so disgusted. He's a total anarchist. But you know how it is when you're a, quote, anarchist in
I don't know.
It's a country that has funding for, like, you know, everything. Everything. It's different than here, let's put it that way. I mean, I'd be an anarchist too, in a heartbeat.
Anyway, good shit.
Yeah, man, great talking with you.
Thank you very much for doing this.
My pleasure.
And that's all I got.
All right, man.
Bye.